So I'm Matt Elliott. I'm one of the directors of Tap Social Movement, and we're a brewery and hospitality organisation based in Oxford. And what we do is we work with people who are coming out of the criminal justice system, so people who are either currently serving prison sentences or recently post-release. And we're all about trying to create training and employment opportunities for those individuals and trying to ease the reintegration back into society. And to do that, we have we run a craft brewery just outside Oxford. We also have several hospitality venues, and we employ people from that background all across the organisation. So whether that's back office, whether it's people serving you at the bar, or whether it's kind of creating the beer itself back at the brewery. It's sort of happenstance, I suppose, was why we ended up here in the first instance. Some of my co-directors have had links back here, and so it was a place that we thought the model might work from the commercial side of the business. From the point of view of our impact work, there are the nature of the work that we do liaising with the prisons, and particularly one of our main kind of impact routes is through working with people who are on day release from prison. And those people, it's a very small subset of the prison population who are given the opportunity to come out on day release, what's called release on temporary license, or ROTL. And that subset of the population are held in open prisons, so category D is the lowest category of kind of security of prisons. Typically people who have been in prison for a long period and are coming towards the end of longer sentences, and they've kind of gradually worked their way down to kind of a lower classification of prison. There are only relatively few of those prisons in the country, and there's one about half an hour north of here, just near Bicester. So that was one of our kind of key things. We definitely needed to be near enough to an open prison to be able to kind of have people coming out on day release. We knew we had some links to Oxford already, and yeah, so it's more by luck than judgment. So I think for us in the work that we do, it's about it's fairness, effectively, and I think the reason that we set up with the purpose that we do, or that we did, is that we had a lot of experience between us, or not lived experience, but experience of witnessing and spending time with individuals who were spending time in prison and then coming outside and finding that they weren't able to reintegrate and re-establish themselves in society on a kind of level playing field. And so I think one of the things that we would say as an organisation, and I would say personally, is that if we're sending people inside to go into prison and spend time, whether that's for punishment or protection of the public or kind of rehabilitation, one of the things we have to recognise is that a very, very large proportion of the prison population is going to eventually come back out into society, and unless we allow them and give them the opportunity to actually participate meaningfully when they do, then there are really no kind of winners from that situation. So creating that level playing field, or helping to create that level playing field by enabling people to reintegrate back into the job market and therefore back into society, was a really important part, and still is a really important part of kind of why we do what we do. I guess that's the kind of, that's I guess the kind of the equity that we would like to see, I think, is people coming out and being allowed to reintegrate in a fair and kind of meaningfully fair way. There have certainly been some challenges along the way. I think one of the more obvious ones, which is probably fairly universal at the moment, is COVID. It's been a very challenging time to be involved in a business which fundamentally operates in the hospitality industry. And so hospitality obviously is a sector that's been very badly hit over the last couple of years. From the point of view of our social impact work as well, it's also created a lot of challenges because prisons are a very bad place for infectious diseases to proliferate. So a lot of the work that we normally do on kind of day release programs has been very, very restricted over the last couple of years, and we've not really been able to do that in the same way that we normally would. That's now easing off again, so that people are allowed to kind of come back out, and we're kind of re-engaging with that side of the work. I think so. That's, I guess, the commercial side, and the kind of practical side of COVID has been a challenge. One of the things that we're trying to do more of now is working with the prisons and working with other organisations to try and ease that barrier between organisations working with. There is a huge prison population. There's a small subset of that population which is eligible for day release, and we would argue that expanding that would be kind of beneficial for all. But even for that subset that is eligible for release on licence, it's often quite difficult for organisations who don't necessarily have the connections into the prisons and don't necessarily have those networks to be able to actually access that very willing and very capable workforce, particularly at the time now when there are huge challenges in sort of labour availability across a number of sectors. It's a real challenge there. So one of the challenges that we have had, and I think that we have worked very hard to overcome, is building the relationships with the prisons that we work with to help enable that, enable the flow of people out of prison and kind of managing that relationship. And so trying to sort of build that out and allow other people to do that more effectively is, I think, something that we see as a key part of what we want to try and do over the next few years as well. About 2 months ago, we did a stock take on how many hours of impact employment, so hours of employment that we'd been able to employ people from our sort of target cohort. And we realised that we'd relatively recently ticked over 50,000 hours of employment for people who are from that background of ex-offending. I think that was a very proud moment. Realistically, I think the proudest moments have all been around the impact that we've sort of, we've done impact reports where we've gone and had conversations with some of the individuals we worked with and kind of checked back in a little while after they've maybe moved on into employment elsewhere. And some of the stories that they've come back with have been really, really inspiring. So yeah, I think those are probably the things we're proudest of. We've just very recently opened a major new brewing site. So our main brewery has kind of upped and moved. So getting that kind of bedded in, we've got quite a lot of growth potential there. So building up the workforce there and bringing some more people in from the prison to help us on the production side. We've got another couple of hospitality venues which are in the works, which will be coming online hopefully within the next 6 months to a year, but these things are always slightly open-ended. And I think longer term, in terms of the impact work, what we are trying to do is, I guess, start more conversations. And sort of we went through a rebranding process and got built the brand a little bit more around sort of conversation starters and trying to get people engaged in the issues, because I think we recognise that the criminal justice system is not one that everyone has exposure to, so the difficulties faced by our sort of target cohort aren't necessarily front of mind for a lot of people. So I think trying to sort of raise awareness, build the brand out such that we can start more of those conversations in a more meaningful way, and hopefully continue to have impact on individuals that we work with. I think that's what we'd strive to achieve. And who knows, if that leads to sort of policy change at some point down the line and we can build it out that far, then we'd be very, very happy to see it. But it could be a little way off. We position ourselves, I guess, at the kind of accessible end of craft beer. So there a lot of styles that you would hope to see in a good craft beer pub or bar, or even in your local co-op. So our best-selling beer is Time Better Spent, which is our sort of flagship IPA, and we sell that obviously through our own venues. We're available in the co-op sort of locally and regionally, and then into sort of pubs and bars across Oxfordshire and kind of surrounding counties. We've got a handful of places up in London that we've started supplying to, and we're sort of looking to build that out over the next few years, and hopefully the new brewery will allow us to.